Good morning. How's everyone today? Good? Have you heard any good stories lately? We should all be saying, yes, I just told you a really great story. Gee whiz. And that's a good one, too. All kinds of great stuff in that story. We'll talk about it in a minute, though. It's a good story, and any good stories that you heard probably engaged you. They grabbed your attention, right? And hopefully that story grabbed your attention. They're entertaining. It teaches, right? I mean, there is entertainment in that story. You might not realize it. You will in a moment. It teaches something, and that teaching helps to change us. And in that change, hopefully we're inspired, right? That's a good story. That's what good stories do. And when we tell good stories, when we look at stories, and then when we look at our lives, and we're able to step back from our life and see a larger perspective on our lives, we see a different idea, and we begin to come to realize that our stories matter. Our stories are important. Your story is important. Your story matters. And it matters, it's important probably in a way that you don't even realize, because of God. God is who and what makes your story, the story of your life, the story of my life, so important. And you'll never know it unless you see it in the context of God's plan for your life. Now, you could look at your life in a very, narrow, kind of, blinders on kind of way, and miss out on so much, or you can look up to the stars and see the bigger picture and follow that star to God's plan and to what God has to offer to you. Last week, we began looking at the beginning of stories. In fact, I had asked you to do a timeline, right? Timeline. And then last week, I asked you to fill it in. Fill in the details, the story of your life. What happened at the beginning of your story? I told you some of the beginning of my own story, of my life. I asked you to do the same because the beginnings are important. But they're important because it's all chosen for us. We don't determine the beginning of our story. We don't determine when we're born, where we're born, who our parents are, who our brothers and sisters might be. We can't have any choice in what we look like, and in a sense, our personality, the talents that we will one day have. And while those things are really important and major in our lives because they really form us and shape us, the truth of the matter is that they're not the most important thing. Reflecting on where you were, what was, gets us to where you are today. And where you are today is what's most important. The story that's happening and it's unfolding right now is what's most important. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, using this wonderful story of this wedding feast at Cana. There was one there in Galilee, and Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. Cana is a little town in Galilee. It really exists. It really is there. There really is a town of Cana. It's about 5 miles north of the town of Nazareth. Nazareth, Jesus, that's where he grew up. It really is there. And in the town of Cana today, there's a church that commemorates this particular miracle. In fact, in the church, there are even 6 stone jars that hold about 20 to 30 gallons of water. They really are. They're not the same jars that were there 2,000 years ago, but they're there. And it's important because weddings were important. Weddings were great celebrations, but they were so great that, when you go to a wedding today, you go to the reception after the wedding ceremony, and the reception lasts a couple hours, and you have a good time, and you go home, right? Can you imagine doing that for a whole week? Now that's a party, right? That is a party. 1 week's worth of partying. And that's what they did until, of course, when the wine was gone, the mother of Jesus said they have no more wine. The party was over. They got a problem. Huge problem. And while for us it might seem insignificant and really not that important, it really was, because hospitality was hugely important. More so even than it is today. And while we tend to be hospitable, in that era, hospitality was everything. Being hospitable was so important. And to have run out of wine would have been the cause of public shame for this young couple. And it would have marked their position in the social standards of their community for the remainder of their lives. social position, not in the, the highbrow kind of thing of social life, but just in the ordinary day-to-day living of life. Oh, they were the ones that ran out of wine. It just would have been a very sad beginning to the married life. Mary is there, of course, the gospel tells us, and she sees what's happening, and she knows what's happening, and she understands that this young couple has a bit of a problem, and she knows exactly what to do. She does what she always does for us. She goes to her son. She knows who he is. She knows what he is all about, and she knows it's time. I've got to get him to do this. Of course, his response to her is this curt, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." Sounds like a bit of a rebuke, and in a way it kind of is, but not really, because what Jesus really knows, and it's really an expression of his humanity, is that if he does this, if he solves this problem, everything changes. Because now everyone is going to know what he is ultimately destined to do. And that's what happens when we bring our problems to Jesus. He does something for us. Now, there were these 6 stone water jars for ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water," so they filled them to the brim. 20 to 30 gallons, figure 25 gallons on average. That's 150 gallons of water. That's a lot of water, wouldn't you say? But the interesting point and the interesting thing is that these were water for ceremonial washings. Ceremonial washings. When they ran out of wine, and Jesus says to the servants, fill these jars with water, can you imagine the servants going, what's this have to do with no wine? Huh? What sense does this make? Of course, Jesus knows what he's doing because he knows how to solve problems. But notice that these are for ceremonial washing. Ceremonial washing, when you went into the house in a ritual kind of way, you'd take water, wash your hands, splash it on your face to clean yourself, to purify yourself. Where do you know that water is used to cleanse, to purify? Huh? Baptism. This is a sign of baptism. But here's another thing. Where do you know that wine is used in that same sort of way to purify us, to make us whole, to fill us up? In the Eucharist. In the Eucharist. This is a sign of baptism in Eucharist, this whole story. Interesting, isn't it? It just changes the whole idea of what's happening here because it shows us something really wonderful. It's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so the servants are wondering, why am I doing this? But they do it because Mary said, do what he tells you to do. She always says that. She always wants us to do what he tells us to do. So they do. And they go then to the head waiter, and the head waiter goes to the bridegroom and says, what's going on? Every man serves good wine first, and when men have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. Why? What's going on here? The head waiter knows. You serve the good wine first because at the beginning, you need to have something that tastes good. And then once you've had enough to drink, it doesn't matter what you drink after that. Right? Yeah, so you bring the lousy stuff out later. But that's not how God works. This young couple has nothing. They've run out of wine. They've got absolutely nothing. And what Jesus does is he gives them the best. He gives them an abundance because that's what God wants to give us. That's what God wants to give each one of you. He wants to take that story of your life and move it from the problems to abundance. He wants to bless you, and that's what Jesus is all about, blessings and celebration. The turning point, of course, is the wine is gone. And you think about it. Nobody really knows this but Mary. She has to go to Jesus to tell him what's happening. And isn't that what we do when we have a problem? We don't tell anybody. If I had a dime for every time someone said to me, Father, I got this problem. I'm sick. I have cancer. I'm dying. But don't tell anybody. I'd be a rich priest. I get it all the time. You get it too. You don't tell anybody your problems because you're embarrassed. You don't want anybody to know about them because they're upsetting. But somebody always knows. And what we have to do then is take what we know and bring it to the one who can do something about it. And Mary does exactly that. She knows the reality of this couple's story. She knows their troubles, their difficulties, and she knows that her son and her son alone has the answer, has the solution. And think about it this way. You're all here in church. You walk into church and you're looking good and you put on your church face. Everybody's happy, yeah? Never mind the fact that when you woke up this morning, oh, geez, Sunday morning I go to church. Oh, I don't know, how long is he going to talk today? And, oh, geez. And the kids, I don't want to go to church today, Mommy. I don't like to. Why do we have to go to church? And you want to just freak out. And it's like, and you're running and you drive to church and the stoplight, the red light goes just as you get to it. I'm going to be late. And then you get to the parking lot and the parking lot's full. And where am I going to park? And then I walk into church. Everything's fine. Yeah. We do that, don't we? Am I got that right? I got that pretty close to the truth, don't I? I know. It might not be true for everybody, but we want to be looking our best. We want to look good. We don't want any problems. We don't want anybody to know that we have problems or difficulties. But underneath it all, we're all human and we all have problems. We all struggle. We all have difficulties. We have issues. We have fears. We have frustrations. We have hurts. We have hang-ups. We have pains. We do. Every one of us does. And our stories are in no small part filled with pain and suffering. It's true for everyone, whether we admit to it or not. No matter how happy our stories seem, there are problems. But guess what? There are also solutions. I got a text from a parishioner not too many days ago. And it was pretty obvious as this parishioner was texting me in the first few lines of the text that he was really not kind of sure he wanted to tell me what he had on his mind. But then as he went on, of course, he did, and probably hit the send button before he really thought about it, because this is what he wrote. Father, you said God has broad shoulders. Remember me saying that? God does. I believe God has broad shoulders. My timeline is a bit dark. But despite that, I've kept going. What more does he want me to do? And why do I have to do it alone? You have insight. You can see the story from an outside perspective. What am I missing? I bet you any one of you could have written that text or something like it, right? Yeah? Because it really points to the reality that what are we going to do? What do we do? What am I missing? How come this is happening to me? Of course, I had a response. My response was something to the effect of, I got a solution for you, but you're going to have to wait till next Sunday to hear my message to find out what it is. How did I know you were going to say that? I get that all the time. We all have problems. We all have difficulties, wherever we are, and whatever stage we are in our story. But guess what? I do have a solution, and guess what? You don't have to wait till next week. Do you want to hear what it is? You sure? Doesn't sound like you want to hear what it is. You want to hear what the solution is? Okay, good. I thought you might want to. Because we all want to know what the solution is. Because I know I want to know what the solution is. Here it is. It's Alpha. It's the Alpha course. That's the solution. And you might think, what? What? Why? What are you talking about, the Alpha course? Well, the Alpha, we have a big parish. I don't know if you realize that. We probably have about 3,000 people in the parish, individuals. Do you know that? That's a lot of people, especially in this area for a parish. So we have a big parish in that regard. Not the biggest, but big. And I'm one person. I don't know if you knew that. I'm only one. It's just me. And what they tell, people who work in my kind of professions, you can really only help about 200 people at once. So there's 3,000, but I can only help about 200. So I can't help everybody, nor do we have a parish staff big enough, nor could we ever have a parish staff big enough that would be able to help everybody in their needs. You just can't do it. It's impossible. So guess what? You have to do it for one another. Parishioners have to be willing to help other parishioners. Now, I know that many of you do that already, and you do it in ways that are beyond imagining, and that's really great. But oftentimes you say, I don't know what to do or how to do it, and I don't have a context in which to do it, and that's where Alpha comes in, because Alpha is the way that we can make it all happen. Because it's the place where parishioners learn to support and care for one another. But even more than that, Alpha is about life change. And I don't talk about the change that, that sea change that I often talk about that we all hate, we don't like to change. The kind of change in life where we recognize that this exercise of life that we're involved in week after week after week is a realization that we're not perfect and that we need to grow in goodness. We need to grow in character. You see, because our formation as individuals didn't end when we were confirmed. Our formation as Christians continues all throughout our lives. And we need to do the kind of things that promote a life change at a fundamental level, and Alpha is that thing. And it happens, because that kind of change rarely happens just coming to Mass each week. And it'll never happen even without that. The real power, though, of the Alpha Course comes from forming friendships that develop into relationships. It comes from having conversations that lead to conversion. God made us for one another. God made us to live in community. God made us to have relationships. And when we enter into really good, healthy kind of relationships, when people sit in a circle and talk about their lives and articulate what's going on in their lives, they grow and they change and they become who God makes them to be in ways that can't otherwise happen. And the Alpha Course really is about that kind of life change, but even more than that. Because the biggest change that we're looking for, the kind of central change that we aim at as a church, the reason why we gather as a church is to become disciples of Jesus Christ. And the Alpha Course is that school of discipleship for us. The way that we enter into that relationship primarily with Jesus and follow Him, because walking with Christ is the only way that we can walk through this life with any kind of meaning and any kind of purpose. Without Christ-centered friendships, our walk of faith will be a whole lot slower and at least and unsteady at best. And at worst, it's a lie. Our Christian faith is a lie without walking with Jesus. And when we have friendships that are centered around Jesus Christ, we connect with Him in a way that we couldn't do on our own. We can't. And we grow in faith. Let me give voice now to some objections. I don't have time. Neither do I. Neither do I. It's the reality of our lives. We're all busy. The Alpha Course is filled with busy people who have come to recognize that they need a break from the busyness, and they make the time because they recognize it's worth it. I wouldn't be comfortable talking to other people about my story and what's going on in my life. Okay, that's true, that's honest. I accept that. But I accept it only because most people don't have a context in which to do that kind of thing. They don't have a reference point, and it feels kind of awkward, funny, and just strange. But it's not. And it won't be. As you think about it, when you have a conversation with somebody that you know, it's no more than that. Alpha is no more than just sitting down and having a conversation. It's not much more. Not much more. I like this one. I grew up Catholic, and I don't know the Bible all that well. I'm not comfortable with joining a prayer group or talking to others about my faith. Well, let me dispel a couple of myths. Alpha is not about Bible study. You don't need to know the Bible at all. It's not a prayer group. Nobody's going to force you to pray. Nor is it something that you have to talk about. You talk about what you want to, or what you don't want to, you keep your mouth shut. Every session starts with a meal. So that night, in the evening, if we have an evening one, you don't have to cook dinner. Wouldn't that be nice? Somebody cook dinner for you? Breakfast, when we do it in the morning, you don't have to make breakfast. Somebody will do it for you. Watch a DVD presentation, 20, 25 minutes, a little conversation afterwards, and off you go. It's that simple. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. At the end, a leader, or if anyone feels comfortable, can lead a prayer, and that's really it. This is my favorite one, though. But if I join a group, it'll look like I have issues. Dude, you got issues. You all have issues. I have issues. We all do. That's just the point. We have issues, and we need help with them. We need help with them. To give it a bit of a test drive, we're going to have the Alpha Dinner Party on Thursday, January the 28th, up at Basile's Restaurant. Be a nice time, free meal at Basile's. You like free meals, don't you? Although we'll ask for a donation. But if you can't, that's okay, no problem. A little donation to help pay for it, but you don't have to. There'll be a little DVD presentation. The guy who gives the talks is really funny, a great guy. And it's not me. I'm not that funny. And then a little conversation, and then go home. It'll be a really great night. And I really encourage you to do that. I really encourage you. And the today's announcement sheet is information about it. Give a phone call to do RSVP, and I'll let you know we're going to Basile's, so there's only limited amount of space. So if you want to go, if you're thinking about it, call right away and make that reservation to go. Later on in February, we're going to be starting the Alpha courses. We're going to be starting 2, well, actually 3 of them. The first one will be on Sunday evenings, and actually there'll be 2 on Sunday evenings, one for adults and one for our 8th, 9th, and 10th grade students. So if you have anybody in that place, what would be a good thing is if you as an adult go to the adult one and send your kids to the kid one, and that'd be a great thing, because there'll be a family dinner to start off with, and then we'll break up into groups, and the ones will go one way, and we'll have child care if you have little younger children. Have child care, we'll take care of your little kids for you, so that you can have a great evening together as a family and learn something about your faith. And then we'll be doing it again on Tuesday mornings. On Tuesday mornings at around 9 o'clock, breakfast will be served. Light breakfast, but a breakfast. If you can't make either of those 2 times in the back, I forgot to mention this at the other masses. If you can't make it, there's a sign-up sheet back there and say, I'd like to do it, but I can't do those 2 times. We'll figure something out, not to worry. Hear the story. Back to the story real quick. The story of the gospel. Life for that couple changed dramatically because Mary knew their couple's problem and brought it to her son. He had a solution, and she, with that couple and God, changed the story for the better. And wherever you are, whoever you are in life, if you're like me, you have challenges and difficulties that you have to face. Some might be significant, some insignificant, some might even be insurmountable. But whoever, wherever you are in the story of your life, you can change. You can write a better story for tomorrow. There's a solution. And it's a whole lot easier, though, if you look for help.